what's important here? You used a thing recently about fuck you money.
Yeah.
Which I thought was really interesting. The idea of like the meme of fuck you money, the idea that you could have enough that you could tell people to fuck off if that's particularly something that, you want to tell people to fuck off. In my experience, you can tell people to fuck off with no money. Good luck. But then there's fuck you freedom was the next iteration. And then you got to fuck you family. The idea that actually what really matters is having a unit. And family, I would take in a sense of friends and family, having like a coterie around you, your tribe, if you will, around you. It's very interesting to me of like where you're going to play that game, where you have agency in the world. And the idea of going, okay, well, there's certain players, Elon Musk has got agency at a ludicrous global level, but, and the global leaders, great. But on an individual level, we all have agency. We can all be,
I really wish I could sort of hire agency to a lot of people. I think it's such lack of...
No, I think sort of the greatest gift, like if you could give your child any gift, likability. Likability goes a long way.
That's Peterson's thing. Do not let your children do anything that makes you not like them. Like a likable child. I think I was fear. I mean, my mum, when I fear I was an incredibly unlikable child. And I think that was probably quite formative in a lot of my experiences with other parents, with other kids, etc.
Yeah, but do you not think that, I know a little bit about your childhood and kind of what you went through as an only child and feeling slightly isolated. But is that not the thing that untethered you and allowed you to sort of fly free?
So true. So I spoke about this yesterday with Stephen Bartlett, that there's layers to unpacking the things that you went through and the formative experiences that you've had. So the first layer is, a chip on your shoulder about whatever it is that happened to you. So for me, being bullied in school, being ostracized, not feeling like I was part of a group. Then the second layer is alchemizing that into something that you really care about. So saying, okay, the skills that I got and the resilience that I developed from spending so much time on my own, I've turned something that was toxic into something which is valuable. Then the layer after that is I get to use the chip on my shoulder and the resentment for the people that came before me and that caused this problem as the activation energy to now deploy this skill set. Okay, so there, now I'm not only have I made lead into gold, but I've now turned this gold into something that's useful. I've formed it into something that I can move forward with. But then the final one, and this is the really fucking difficult one, is to realize that if the people who tormented you are the reason that you've developed the skill sets that you care about, then you can't resent them, you should thank them. That you genuinely should look back at most of the things that you were ashamed of or guilty about or fearful of in your past and realize that that's the dark side of one of the lightest and most proud things that you've got. So overall, if the challenges that you went through formed a person that you like, those bullies in school, I should sit down with all of them and say, yeah, thanks, mate.
Yeah, that's it's very interesting to listen to, because when you go, to go experience, it's kind of easy now. You're 35, you're a grown man and you're doing great. But to sort of think back to, you are still that child.
Yep.
You're still that lonely kid searching for connection. But is that not the whole of the show? Like every episode I listen to, you're sort of there, kind of looking for a hug. The 3 humiliations of humanity. So it was Copernicus, we're not the center of the universe. And then it was Darwin, we're descended from animals, we're not special. Right, all right. And then the third one, Freud, our self-conscious is running the show. We don't even know ourselves. Fucking hell. Fucking hell. It's like humanity's really taken a combination.
One big hit after another.
Yeah, those are big hits. And you go, yeah, we don't really know ourselves, but that's kind of the journey, and that's the whole thing. I mean, that's why I think, not to bring it all back to stand-up comedy, but I do think there's something magnificent about doing a bit of stand-up. Going and finding your voice and what you find funny and your sense of humor, because everyone's kind of got one, right?
Yeah, so this delusion thing, people don't fully know themselves or the world around them or what's going to happen or all of the rest of it. Given the fact that you don't know yourself and you're deluded in some way, why not pick a delusion that is useful to you?
Well, this is what NLP gets you, neuro-linguistic programming, talks a lot about presuppositions. Because you can't know. You don't know it for a fact. It's kind of, all a bit of a pseudoscience. So what's useful? Rather than thinking about what's correct, What's useful? What makes a difference? If I believe I can do that, I can do that. Belief makes such a huge difference. If you believe in something, you can it gives you the will to do it, to give it a go. About what's possible. What are your dreams going to be? I mean, when you started this podcast, presumably you didn't think, I'll be in Austin, Texas, talking to the great and the good and trying to figure things out.
Yeah.
It's like, that's why I think the book thing's really interesting for you now, of like trying to, rather than just at the level of, okay, trying to figure this thing out and it's kind of interesting to chat about. It's like putting down these thoughts and going, does it grow corn? What are the wisdom that have affected how you live day to day? That's why I think that the next 24 hours is really interesting.
Yeah.
Of like, what could you do that adds value to you tomorrow?
It's such a lovely frame. Such a lovely frame. You talk about disposition being more important position.
Yeah.
What do you mean by that?
Well, listen, I know some billionaires that are pretty miserable, and I know some guys with boring office jobs that are very happy. I think your disposition it's very difficult to change, but it's often easier than changing the world. You're in your head on your own a lot of the time, no matter how connected you are, no matter how great your family, you are you. And and the way that you see the world, the rose-tinted glasses of looking at the world, looking for jokes, is pretty tremendous. I think the thing that makes a difference to people on disposition is, in the most part, it's gratitude can kind of move the dial. That's the thing that seems to make a difference, because it's that thing of like, if you're in a bad mood all the time, you're not in a bad mood, you're an arsehole. It's the truth of it. So how are you most of the time? How you treat a waiter or a waitress, or how you react when you get a speeding ticket, or any of those little things, because life is going to throw lots of that stuff at you. How do you react to it? How are you in the world? What's your sunny disposition, or are you kind of, are you boring?
Well, you've depression, as I have. I actually thought throughout all of my 20s that I was depressed. I thought that was the texture of my mind. I thought it was locked in, like the worst weed trip that you've ever had. This is me for the rest of my life.
Okay, so I'm interested in conflated words.
Mm-hmm.
I often think depression is conflated with sadness. And sadness is much more difficult to admit, and it's much more, there's more of a stigma around being depressed. There's a certain glamour to being depressed.
It's aloof. It's sort of this mysterious thing. It's pathologized.
It suggests depth.
Yeah.
Whereas sadness is just, you sad fuck. You're sad. What do? You've got a surface level life, run clubs, I'm sure you're having a nice time, whatever.
Yeah.
But it's surface level. So that depression was maybe sadness. But I think if it's environmental, if you could change it, if it's not to do with the serotonin levels in your head and the chemical imbalance, then if you can do something about it, it's sadness. So assuming it's sadness and that you can do something about it. I mean, listen, it's people with real mental health problems, and my heart goes out to them. But for a lot of people, it's just it's circumstantial.
You went through periods of acute sadness or depression, however you want to label it. And yet you've managed to get yourself to a stage, largely.
Anxiety's been is really my
drug of choice.
Yeah. And anxiety, I think there's a gift in there. I think the gratitude that I have for anxiety is it's the flip side of creativity.
Correct.
That your mind is racing, and sometimes you're trying to solve a problem in the future because you don't have anything to do now. That's why people talk about, I'm so happy when I exercise, because you're giving yourself a problem right now.
Andrew Tate, he says, having things isn't fun, getting things is fun. And
a stopped clock is right twice a day. I mean, he says a lot of things. He's bound to get some stuff right. It's kind of an interesting cultural phenomenon, because I think
what do you think happened with Tate? Have you done a post-mortem on his ascendancy to
No, I mean,
fame?
The only thing I would say is that young men, I feel, are in crisis. And not that young women aren't in crisis. They are as well. I mean, young people generally. But it feels like young men are having a silent crisis. We talk about things and we don't talk about other things. And, young men committing suicide seems to be it's a huge problem at the moment. And our purpose and agency is a huge, why are video games so popular, especially with young men. And it's a facsimile of career and purpose and drive and different levels. And there's something in us, not that men and women are so very different. I always think like the big difference gender-wise is men are all taking a performance-enhancing drug every single day. And that drug is testosterone. And really, if you had to talk about what testosterone does for men, it's risk-taking. So, and we talk a lot about all the CEOs, all big CEOs are men and it's very unfair. But also prisons are full of men because men take ludicrous risks. So I think if you were going to life hack I've got a daughter, and the advice I'll give her is take more risks. And you can, because you're making it a conscious decision, it's not a hormonal decision, then maybe you can actually do better because you can not do the dumb shit. You don't need to jump from the high board, but you can move to a city where there's more opportunities. Taking those risks that the average man takes. Like, I can look back and it seems so easy that I left my job and became a comic because I did it. The idea that was preordained was so fucking stupid. Such a ludicrous 20s Hail Mary catch of this life's boring, I'm going to go and do something more fun. Crazy.